Welcome back. I'm your host Ramudisa the High King. In previous videos, Royal Family, we've been covering the situation as it unfolds in Palestine, as the government of Israel continues to commit war crimes in the name of the idea that they're the chosen people of God, when in reality they've been behaving like devils, for lack of a better phrase, committing war crimes, genocide, 75 years of colonial settlement, and the present day society all around the world is questioning what is the value of allowing such a country to do as it sees fit, when it's all based on an intellectual fallacy, as Israel is a made-up state created in a post-World War II environment whereby it could have been anywhere. If you happen to have missed some of my videos where we covered upon that historical narrative of how Israel came to be, the British and other countries got together and they decided at random that the Jewish peoples need a nation unto themselves, and they just picked Palestine. They could have picked anywhere. They could have picked Kenya, Uganda, was almost in these regions, right? But of course that didn't fly, and so they settled upon the land that was occupied by the Palestinians at the time. 75 years later, war crimes later, atrocities upon atrocities, ending up in a single day of what some consider retribution, depending on how you look at things. There they go, committing war crimes in the name of their false claim to somebody else's land, as is the way of the colonizers. Now, Royal Family. In today's clip, multiple things are happening and I would like to cover some of these situations. A lot keeps happening all at once. It's difficult to keep track of these things nowadays, but we do what we can where we can. On one hand, we have the fact that you have to argue that Israel has the right to exist, which is funny to me. Not only did you colonize a place, but then you have to spend 75 years justifying its right to exist, its right to defend itself, and so on and so forth. Into the present day era where people are asking a lot of questions. Why would you continue to support war crimes when you know full damn well that this country is a made up state and the only way it can sustain itself is to commit atrocities against the indigenous peoples? The United States is spiraling down into madness as it continues to cover this conversation. People all over the world and in various institutions are protesting against Israel's war crimes. From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. As Israel continues to drop bombs on people, drop bombs on buildings, commit crimes like ethnic cleansing and so on and so forth, any attempt to speak up about these truths is labeled anti-Semitism. Anyone who will protest Zionist extremism are labeled anti-Semites. And any attempt to speak the historical truth of how Israel came to be are all clamped down, silenced, and basically blacklisted, blackballed from working opportunities in the future, from advertising institutions, all these things. In my previous video where Elon Musk himself, brothers and sisters, who was sent on a tour across Israel, was made to witness a bunch of things, and then he came back with a attitude where he basically told advertisers to go F themselves. And he basically also said, we live in a world where people are concerned with looking and appearing good while committing evil. Now enter today's video, Royal Family, whereby the US vetoes a call for a ceasefire, as 15,000 or so souls have been lost in Gaza with Israel's relentless bombardment of the location. And it's just been sad, family. The stories coming out of there, the images coming out of there, just been tragic. Fathers holding their children, picking up pieces of their loved ones, picking up pieces of their children, putting them in bags. It's just been sad, and sadness all day, every day. No water, no electricity, no internet, Israel committing atrocities and then trying to silence, creating fake news and propaganda. And if you also happen to miss the story where Kanye once upon a time said that these individuals have managed to conquer the economies of the world, of course utilizing their reparations they gained from Germany post-Holocaust to fund their development. And with their developments, they created organizations to try and lie and justify Israel's right to exist. It doesn't. Israel does not have the right to exist, if you ask me. It's a colonial state, an apartheid state that stands only on war crimes and genocide and war crimes against humanity. And when you try to call out this truth, you'll be labeled all kinds of things. Family, I put it to you, it is not anti-Semitism. It is just the truth. Beware anyone who tries that hard to run away from the truth and rewrite history and facts to justify their own fantasies. Let us begin with what today's video is about. As people call for a ceasefire in Gaza so that humanitarian aid and relief can happen, so that peoples can know peace, others can give birth in peace, children can live happy, the US continues to reject. They keep running on the narrative of Hamas this, Hamas that, when in reality it's never been about Hamas. No one's looking for Hamas. Everyone is dedicated to committing absolute ethnic cleansing, and they've been caught on hot mic. In my previous video we covered upon that, where a woman said, how many more lives have to be lost? And then someone in the background said, all of them. As well as other individuals and politicians in the US who have been caught saying similar things. They don't care about Hamas. They just want to eradicate the Palestinians and get after the mineral resources of that region. For our first clip, we will share this.
Is deeply disappointed with the outcome of today's vote. Regrettably, and in the face of untold misery, this Council is unable to demand a humanitarian ceasefire. Let me be clear. Against the backdrop of the Secretary General's grave warnings, the appeals by humanitarian actors, the world's public opinion, this Council grows isolated. It appears untethered from its own founding document. What is the message we are sending Palestinians if we cannot unite behind a call to halt the relentless bombardment of Gaza? Indeed, what is the message we are sending civilians across the world who may find themselves in similar situations? Mr. President, the disappointing outcome of this vote will not deter us from continuing to implore Council members to act and bring the violence in Gaza to an end.
Yet again, American diplomacy is leaving scorched earth and destruction in its wake. Colleagues of the current US administration, of course, as our experience shows, it's hard to expect common sense. We have no illusions on this front. However, an absolutely exceptional situation has come about in which we need to act without blinkers on. Colleagues, how are you going to explain to your own citizens, hundreds of thousands of which are coming out to protest in defense of Palestine in American cities, if once again you block the demand for an immediate ceasefire? How are you going to look your Middle East partners in the eye, who today are collectively asking for you to support the UAE's proposed draft resolution?
It needs to be pointed out that condoning the continuation of fighting while claiming to care about the lives and safety of the people in Gaza and the humanitarian needs there is self-contradictory. Condoning the continuation of fighting while advocating prevention of spillover of the conflict is self-deceiving. Condoning the continuation of fighting while making every mention of the protection of women and girls and human rights is extremely hypocritical. All this shows once again what double standard is.
Despite a rushed process and lack of appropriate consultation.
Now, this is why I advocate for African American brothers and sisters to stay away from US politics. Under no circumstances should you get it into your head that you're actually doing something good being part of the US political structure. As Obama had to qualify himself as being all-American, he aided and abetted in the destruction of Libya. Now he has that war crime to live with for the rest of his life. Maybe he won't be held accountable, but there you go. It's part of the system. Now, when you turn to these present events, all you see are a good percentage of black peoples in the face of certain structures, as is the Biden administration. And therefore, I warn brothers and sisters, please don't be a part of the US politics. It's not good for you. The karma there is not meant for you. All right? You were brought there as enslaved Africans. Trying to become a part of the political structure that enslaved your ancestors is wild. And the karma won't end positively for you, because you're going to get that dirt on you like Obama has.
By the resolution's authors, the United States engaged in good faith on this text. We propose language with an eye toward a constructive resolution that would have reinforced the life-saving diplomacy we have undertaken since October 7, increased opportunities for humanitarian aid to enter Gaza, encouraged the release of hostages, and the resumption of humanitarian pauses, and laid a foundation for a durable peace. Unfortunately, nearly all of our recommendations were ignored, and the result of this rush process was an imbalanced resolution that was divorced from reality, that would not move the needle forward on the ground in any concrete way. And so, we regretfully could not support it.
While they say they regret that they cannot support a ceasefire in Gaza, guess what's happening on the other side? Guess what's happening? While the Jewish community of America is crying about the way in which people are protesting for the Palestinians to end the suffering as hate speech and anti-Semitism and this, that, and the third, they are actually committing actual genocide. And anyone who tries to call them out on it are labeled haters of the Jewish community. While that's also happening, and people are having to tiptoe around speaking the truth, and US actively supporting Israel's commission of these war crimes and refusing a ceasefire, you ask yourself why. The United States is a war machine. It functions on war and chaos. It destabilizes other people's countries routinely in order to extract its raw materials for dirt cheap if free if possible. And now when you understand why they will reject a ceasefire, you look at the bigger picture and you see what? US approves emergency $160 million arms sale to Israel.
We have some breaking news in the Israel-Hamas war. Just a short time ago, the State Department announced the White House has approved $106 million in emergency arms sales to Israel. We have two reports on the war. NBC's Hala Garani is in Tel Aviv, but we're going to begin with NBC's Gary Grumbach, who's traveling with the president. He joins us from Los Angeles. Gary, what is Israel getting?
So they are getting $106 million worth of essentially tank shells, which are really ammunition, if you will. It's about 14,000 pieces of ammunition here. And this is not a gift. This is a sale to Israel. But what they did here, what the State Department and the White House did, was completely bypass the regular process for arms sales to happen. Usually you have to go through Congress. It's a 30-day kind of waiting period where the congressional members get to review what happens, and then each side gets to vote on it. And then it goes to the White House for approval. That did not happen here at all. The State Department saying in a statement, quote, the United States is committed to the security of Israel and it is vital to U.S. national interests to assist Israel to develop and maintain a strong and ready self-defense capability. This proposed sale is consistent with those objectives. And Secretary of State Antony Blinken has made several trips to the region where he's met with leaders who say this is exactly what they need. Alex?
So while the world is calling for a ceasefire, the US vetoes, essentially causing people to call into question the whole relevance of the UN if it actually has any power, and the UN Security Council, and whether or not the US should have the right to veto. Their refusal of a ceasefire is actually based upon it being bad for business. As you've just heard in this video, it was a wholesale, right? And people are asking these questions. What is the value of the UN Security Council? So in the face of 15K plus fatalities, the US is committed to the security of Israel because what? Biden once upon a time said if there were no Israel, they would have to invent one. It being a made-up state and operating on the fallacy that it has the right to exist, when in fact it does not. No colonial state has the right to exist. Indigenous peoples have every right under international law to resist occupation.
I want to ask you one more question. As I've said, and Ms. McGill, I appreciate the fact that you feel concerned about my feeling about the fundamental culture on the campuses that's foundational to this issue, denial of the right of Israel to exist.
Crazy how you have to argue Israel's right to exist. You would think people wouldn't have an issue with it, but here we are. Not only do they have to justify their right to exist, they have to invest in serious propaganda behind it and serious financial might in bribing every institution possible. Dare anyone speaks the truth, and they will be on the receiving end of the wrath of Israel. There's an organization that we'll speak about in a later video called AIPAC. Very heavy stuff.
So I want to ask each one of you, President Gay, do you believe that Israel has a right to exist as a Jewish nation?
It doesn't.
I agree that the state of Israel has the right to exist.
That's the power of Israel's money and the opportunity and the ability for them to mess with your work opportunities should you speak against them.
Ms. McGill, same question.
I agree, Chairwoman Fox. The state of Israel has the right to exist.
Dr. Kornbluth.
Absolutely. Israel has the right to exist.
I want to thank our witnesses again.
That's how you know who controls your country, family, when everyone is afraid to speak the truth, fearing possible retribution. That's crazy to me. So they will suppress the truth, and anyone who dares speak up against the false narrative of this made-up state, Zionist extremism, and they will shadow ban any channel that even touches on this topic. Lucky for those who are out there still making it. And as the US continues to suppress the possibilities of a ceasefire, here they are selling weapons. And why, family? Why?
God forbid killed, but the state
do I say what I'm saying?
Before the ethnic.
Here we go.
Put the ethic before the ethnic. To step back from your rightful and passionate loyalty to Jewish people and Jewish institutions.
This man is a rabbi, apparently.
Step back from that. Just set it aside for a minute and try to look at the situation in a bit of a detached way. A settler colonial society that exists because it stole other people's land, destroyed their houses, kicked them out, and it's still doing that continually for more than 75 years, does actually not have a right to defend itself. Individual Israeli Jews should not be harmed or, God forbid, killed. But the state, actually, I don't believe it has a right to defend itself. And I'm just using that as an example of something that's kind of common parlance, or people just say it. You hear claims about Israeli women being by members of Hamas. There's never one example, like I can say very confidently, that didn't happen. Even, there have been 4 hostages released, a mother and daughter, maybe 2 weeks ago, 2 elderly women about a week ago. All 4 of them talk very comfortably and freely about how well treated they were fed, nobody harassed them. Not only that, but even in Israel, they have been shut down, and their government is actively contradicting what they say about their own personal experience. There was a woman who survived the attack on Kibbutz Be'eri. Her first name was Yasmin. I forget her last name. She survived it. And she said, she's the first one who said that the people around the Jews, the Israeli Jews around her who were killed by Israeli fire. The Israelis were going to free them from the Hamas fighters and killed them. And she said there was a Hamas guy captured her and said to her in Hebrew, "Don't worry, we're not going to hurt you. We just want to take you as a hostage." And nobody hurt her. And then she escaped. She said that in Hebrew. It was in the Israeli media. It's of her talking. I understand Hebrew. That's what she said. But the story is how brutal and savage and uncivilized and dangerous and civilization needs to defeat them. I just want to give some background for me. So again, seriously, in my life, I have heard so many people talk about during the Holocaust, they were in a ghetto, they were in a concentration camp, people around them are dying, and people would say, oh, if only someone somewhere in the world knew what was happening to us. And I have that in my mind.
But of course, Israel is suppressing the stories and spreading propaganda where they can in order to justify their war crimes against humanity and people of Gaza. And that's it for today's video, Royal Family. US vetoes UN resolution on immediate humanitarian ceasefire. I think let me share this clip real quick.
Is facing criticism after it vetoed. So the United States is facing criticism after it vetoed a proposal or proposed UN Security Council resolution for an immediate ceasefire in the conflict between Israel and Hamas. That resolution was proposed by the United Arab Emirates and received 13 votes in favor out of the 15-member council. That's because the United Kingdom decided to abstain. Let's discuss this development with international relations commentator and analyst Dr. Kingsley Makubela, who joins us now via our video link this morning. Great to have you on the program as always, Dr. Makubela. Thanks very much indeed for your time. You know, for people who are critical of the U.S., what this moment has done is brought into sharp focus questions once again around the restructuring of the United Nations as things stand. Should the countries with veto powers continue to have veto powers, given the impact of this power?
As you know, South Africa hasn't been hesitating at all, not one bit. We call out Israel and its war crimes. We've shut down the embassy. We've recalled our diplomats right along with other countries. Efforts to boycott their businesses, head to toe, top to bottom, left, right, and center are underway. Naturally, the Zionist extremists in our country are freaking out and panicking and making all kinds of noise. Because again, Kanye was right. With the reparations they gained from Germany, what did they do with it? They silently conquered people's economies and used it to bribe anyone and everyone. And it's just been insane. And everyday Americans are waking up, everyday British people, everyday Europeans, everyday Canadians, everyday South Africans are waking up to realize who actually controls the economy. Because when you follow the money, you always find someone with heritage of a particular community. And it's wild, family. It's wild. But it is what it is. Only when you recognize can you call it out and do something and reclaim your economy. As I've said, I'll cover that in a later video called APAC, an organization.
Good morning, Ayanda. The question of the veto powers within the United Nations system is unlikely to go away. Because those who hold the power to veto are unlikely to relent on this, as we have seen now with the recent resolution. And by the way, this resolution, was brought up because of the concerns that were raised by the Secretary General of the United Nations, Mr. Antonio Guterres. In terms of Chapter 15, I think Article 99 of the UN Charter, the Secretary General has the responsibility to bring before the Security Council any matter that he deems necessary, any matter that has implication for international peace and security. And he has done that as mandated by the Charter of the United Nations. And the United States actually has done disservice to itself. The reputation and the legal standing of the United Nations around the world is damaged by this behavior of the U.S.
There we go.
Absolutely. And it's coming at a time when already there's been very serious conversations around creating this new world order, you know, and this has materialized, for instance, in the expansion of BRICS, other countries wanting to band together and in some ways create an alternative to the UN, because already there are perceptions that there is this massive imbalance in the world, and especially in how the UN deals with some of these geopolitical tensions.
You know, maybe that's a discussion for another day. I'm involved with a think tank in Washington that is really redesigning the New World Order. And it's a research that includes about 120 people, most of them former ministers of defense and former foreign ministers. I'm saying that's a discussion for another day. But there's a realization that the unipolar world has really harmed the reputation of the U.S. itself, but it has really compromised the global system in terms of attending to issues that are really pertinent and that are really important for humanity.
Imagine having the power to veto a ceasefire because you are working on an arms trade that feeds the war. Imagine that. Because everyday Americans are waking up to the realization that their tax dollars are being used to commit atrocities. They're banding together and realizing what can they do. Starbucks, rumor has it, lost about 11 billion in profits, which is wild, since people decided to no longer support them.
And there's a need to really rethink a new system. And I think it's going to take years. I hope it would happen in our lifetime, that a new system would emerge that would really be very balanced in terms of dealing with the challenges that we're seeing around the world. Not only conflict, issues of food security, or related issues that we see.
And I suppose until then, the question will be, what happens in the interim? Because these conflicts are happening now. The humanitarian catastrophe is unfolding today. And again, you know, the real concern here is that when the United Nations, given its stature in society, in the global community is what I'm referring to here, if they can't come to speaking in a uniformed voice around what's taking place, there are many people who are going to completely give up on the power of multilateralism in its entirety. And I don't think anybody benefits from that.
You know, if this resolution was adopted unanimously, if there was no U.S. veto, what we would have likely seen emerging was arms embargo on Israel if Israel refuses to comply, because decisions of or resolutions of the Security Council are legally binding on all member states. Was the U.S. really ready for that? And that's what the U.S. is trying to preempt, in my own view. They are preempting the consequences of Israel failing to comply with the resolution of the Security Council. And because the U.S. is breathing oxygen in that conflict that is going on there.
There we go.
They are providing arms to Israel, and they are not having any limitation in terms of how this arms should be used. But the public discourse around the world is really emerging. And I think there's pressure on politicians really to stop the carnage that we are seeing in Israel. There's no justification for killing of ordinary women and children in the conflict, elderly people. And the conflict has been phrased as a conflict between Israel and Hamas, which is a fallacy. This is a conflict between the Palestinians and the Israelis, because ordinary Palestinians who are not necessarily members of Hamas are caught in this violent act.
Indiscriminate deleting of innocent peoples in the name of hunting Hamas. Crazy.
Absolutely. Well, in putting up their own defense, the Deputy Ambassador of the U.S. to the UN, Robert Wood, said that the text itself, this is around the draft resolution, was, quote, divorced from reality and would not move the needle forward on the ground in any concrete way. It comes back to that question I had asked about how impactful multilateralism actually is. part of what the U.S. seemingly is arguing here is that even if this draft resolution was to be adopted, the situation on the ground is unlikely to have changed.
How the hell would they have known? How the hell would they know?
It was going to change. It wouldn't have moved a needle according to what Robert Wood was saying, but it would have moved the mountain in terms of saving lives, because if Israel does not comply with the Security Council resolution, there are serious consequences that would have emerged. The Security Council has instruments within its powers to impose sanctions, to impose arms embargo, and the only thing that is fueling that conflict, Ayanda, is the arms that the U.S. is supplying there. So that's what they were trying to prevent.
Boom, son. They reject the ceasefire because it would have been bad for business. Corrupt. Morally corrupt. Spiritually corrupt. And then they want to claim to be the leaders of the free world. Where is the freedom? Freedom to do what? To pillage and plunder. And spread atrocities and genocide. All to sustain your own superiority. Therefore, I repeat, brothers and sisters, please do not try to be a part of the U.S. political system, because there's nothing there for you but bad karma. And the things you will have to do in the name of the might of the U.S. will put blood on your hands.
If there was a resolution that really compels, because if you look at the draft resolution, was demanding a ceasefire immediately. So it would have moved a mountain in terms of the lives of ordinary people who are caught in this violence in Palestine.
It's one thing to stop the latest bout of violence, Dr. Makubela, but it's another to, of course, stop the war, right? Which we know is one of the oldest wars of our time, spanning decades. And I suppose that's also part of the concerns that are being raised at this moment, right? Yes, the immediate goal, without a doubt, unequivocally, should be to stop the carnage and the conflict that is taking place today in the Middle East. But how do we make sure that it's sustainable and that we are not back here in the next couple of years?
Well, if the conflict stops today, it will provide conducive environment for the final negotiation of the status of the State of Israel. It would allow a dialogue in terms of how the State of Israel, because most countries recognize the State of Palestine and the State of Israel, and how the State of Israel and the State of Palestine must coexist within each other. The root causes of the conflict, of course, has to be addressed. Addressing the conflict or stopping the conflict for now, it wouldn't have resolved the long-term problem. Addressing the long-term issue, that's where the global community now is focused on. I mean, it's unprecedented that members, parliament in Spain and government in Spain, in France, they're starting to say, let's resolve the root causes of the conflict, which is the two-state solution. You would have seen even the Israeli ambassador during the debate, Ayanda.
There cannot be, because they came from freaking Europe, or they were chased out of Europe. They colonized this location, supported by those who felt so bad for them at the time. I put it to you that let them leave that location and go back to Europe. Let them be reabsorbed into the structures of European society. The idea that the Palestinians have to settle for the fact that they were colonized and that's that is wild to me. Like here in South Africa, we're finding out the hard way that sharing a country with colonizers is not all that it's cut out to be. They will continue to manipulate and do things in order to sustain themselves, while keeping you in endless poverty and hardship. Apartheid is apartheid, royal family. It's always the same. Settlers will rewrite the rules of everyday life. They will rewrite history in order to justify their own existence. And it will always be to the detriment of the colonized. Thus, everything about this situation has to be challenged. Everything they claim must be challenged. We are living in an age of truth, family. No more lies, no more fallacies, no more feeding into people's fantastical beliefs that they're the chosen people of God and therefore everybody around them has to. No, you cannot be the chosen people of God. You don't have melanin. Period. The sun burns you. You are out there getting melanoma, claiming to be claiming to belong to Israel.
He doesn't speak about Palestinians. He speaks about Gazan. That's what they speak, because they are avoiding the fact that there's a legitimate people who exist, and these are Palestinian, and the Palestinian must exist within the borders of 1966. That's what has to happen following ceasefire. But you can't have negotiation whilst you're having these brutal conflicts going on.
There's no doubt that what has taken place in the UN Security Council, and indeed what has taken place in the Middle East over the past couple of weeks, will be etched in the history books. I wonder how you reckon the United States and the UN will be looked at when we look back to this moment and how they respond to the carnage.
The U.S. has failed the litmus test of providing leadership to the world. That's how the U.S. is going to be judged. And I think the reputation and the standing of the U.S. around the world to provide global leadership, it's really damaged by this behavior. And there's an acknowledgement by that. A lot of non-governmental organizations like the Médecins Sans Frontières, the question of the Human Rights Watch, and Amnesty International have come very hard in terms of the U.S. behavior. So the U.S. standing is damaged as being a beacon of democracy, a beacon of civil rights, and so on. It's seriously damaged.
Dr. Kingsley Makubela, great to get your take.
I don't say damaged, I say the truth is being revealed for all the world to see. They were never the champions of civil rights. They were never the champions of democracy. They were never the champions of world peace. They were the source of chaos with their alphabet agencies, constantly destabilizing nations, constantly affecting people's ability to develop themselves because it would have affected their own economic standing. And we will touch upon the APAC organization in a later video as we dive deeper into an idea known as state capture. If you don't know what state capture is, family, you will find out. Until that time, though, let me leave you off with this clip proving to you that it is possible to boycott institutions into oblivion. There's a movement known as Boycott, Divest, and Sanction, BDS. Believe it or not, apparently there are even legislations against the ability to boycott, divest, or sanction Israel in certain parts of the US, which is wild to me. But there you have it.
Giant has a big problem. In their language, a grande problem. The company has lost around $11 billion. That's 10% of their value, just wiped off. How did it happen? Thanks to the Israel-Hamas war. Starbucks supported Israel. This led to a boycott. Then there were strikes. Starbucks union stood in solidarity with Palestine, and all of this has driven away customers. Looks like no one likes their coffee flavored with political tension. But what does it mean for Starbucks,
political tension?
Can they survive this onslaught? Our next report explores.
How do you like your coffee? Hot, cold, with a dash of cinnamon, or with a side of political tensions? Well, it depends on who you ask, but looks like politics and coffee don't go hand in hand. And Starbucks is learning it the hard way. The coffee giant has lost $11 billion in value. That's nearly 10% of the company's value erased.
Damn.
So what explains this? Were the holiday flavors not up to the mark? Or are customers tired of pumpkin spice? Sadly, it's none of that. Customers still love their overpriced lattes, but not with a political opinion. After the Israel-Hamas war broke out, Starbucks found itself in hot water. Like many companies, it expressed support for Israel. But that didn't go down well in West Asia. In November, Starbucks in Egypt reportedly laid off workers. It was forced to cut expenses. Why? Because there were just no customers. Then there are the Starbucks unions. It's called Starbucks Workers United. They reportedly posted solidarity with Palestine on X. The tweet was swiftly deleted, but it sparked calls for a boycott. Starbucks also distanced itself from the comments, but the damage was already done.
Giant has a big...
And that's it for today's video, Royal Family. If you appreciate the video, make sure you head over to my channel. Follow up on more topics on this particular incident as we've been covering them in previous weeks. To quote our famous sister with the curly braids, Sister Vicky Dillard, world affairs are our concern as African peoples because we are the ancients. We are indigenous to this planet, and we must stay focused on all these things that affect everyone everywhere because, again, we are the people. When we ignore global affairs, family, we will stand on the receiving end of them. And to follow up on more videos, smash that subscribe so you can catch up future videos. The thumbs up with the algorithm knows good, and other like-minded souls know that we're out here. Boycott, divest, and sanction. Be not afraid to speak the truth. Challenge these false narratives as cooked up by colonial settlers. It is not anti-Semitism, it is the truth. If they want to silence you or shadow ban you, that's just them revealing their true colors. All you can do is keep on keeping on, as we are in the age of truth, and truth will prevail, royal family. As we continue to pay attention to these global events and global affairs, we must appreciate how they will inevitably affect us should we keep our eyes closed. Let me know what you think in the comments below, royal family. I'm your host, Ramudisa the High King. I appreciate you for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Stay royal, stay blessed. Peace.